The mind is a beautiful thing. The mind is a beautiful organ that's very intelligent, but it's meant to be used for some things and not all things. And I think where humans go wrong is they try to use their mind for situations where the mind has no business, so to speak, because it's not the mind, it's the heart. And the heart really just wants to be connected. The heart doesn't want to be separated from other people. So I traveled to Europe a fair amount, and I love European countries because when I travel to Italy, for example, and I go to the grocery store and I want to buy some pasta, there's basically one type of pasta in the store. And you just buy the pasta because it's all there is. I go to Vaughn's, there's 40 different versions of pasta. And I feel so stressed out. I don't really know what's the right one. And just the fact that there's so many choices and I feel like I'm overwhelmed. That is the state of mental well-being resources for students these days. This is how I feel about it. And I've been talking about this to the administration for a while because I've talked to the chancellor, I've talked to the vice chancellor, I've talked to anybody who's willing to listen to me about how to bring well-being courses onto campus. And every time well, now people are starting to listen, but when I first started knocking on doors about 2 years ago, people would say, oh, well, it sounds like what you want to do is great. I love, Karen, that you want to have these well-being classes, but you should talk to people at CAPS because they've got these workshops, and you should talk to people at the Zone, and you should talk to people at FitLife, and you should talk to the people at ReLyfe. I'm just using and I said, great that there's all these resources, but it's overwhelming and students don't know which one to use. And so I'm a big fan of one-stop shopping. My advocacy for well-being courses comes from let's work in a domain that students know how to navigate, which is signing up for classes, especially ones that are required. They know that's their terrain. So having well-being courses for credit, which is what I do, to me is it's going to be easier for them to go to it, know what's required, see what the benefits are. Uh, I put a lot of attention on presentation. I give a lot of presentations, obviously, as lecturer at UCSD, but also because I give talks a lot. And I train people, I coach people on how to give a good presentation. Isaac knows because he's presented in my class. And I try to be playful with it because there's so many ways in which even when you deeply understand something, being able to convey it clearly to another human is not easy. And there's so many ways for things to go wrong in this clunky system of symbols called language. Language is a clunky system of symbols. It's the best that we've got, but it's clunky. And I can't begin to tell you how many times either I've been misunderstood by somebody, or I misunderstood somebody, or I said something in class where somebody later came up to me and said, oh, I'm really surprised that you said X, Y, and Z. And I said, oh, I don't feel X, Y, and Z at all. So I'm surprised you thought I said that. We all know what it means to take care of our physical bodies, and we do it by going to the gym and eating well, sleeping well. And if you ask somebody who's practicing taking care of their physical body, oh, well, how often do you do it? Do you go to the gym once a year or twice a year? They say, no. It's a commitment. It's a daily practice, or a semi-daily practice. But the idea of having a practice for your mental well-being is kind of like, what? A practice for my mental well-being? But why not? It's just as important as your physical well-being. And we know that your emotional and physical well-being are very tied together. So learning sustainable well-being is learning the tools, so to speak, that you never learned from your elementary school teacher. You probably didn't learn them from your parents. And once you have the tools, you use them throughout your life. And they're not quick fixes. They're not just be happy and everything will be okay. It's sort of a deeper dive. Learning sustainable well-being is kind of a deeper dive into what it is to be a human. Because if you don't really take a look at yourself, you're not going to be at peace. You're not going to, the Greeks said that the greatest thing, the most important pursuit is to know thyself. And it's fun, it can be playful, you don't have to be hard on yourself, but to really see all the ways that we kind of pretend as humans, we don't really say what we're thinking or feeling, and we push things down. And so it's a course on exploring all of that, like the universe that is inside each of us, so that we don't pretend and that we don't suffer. When I was growing up, I was often confused about things that my parents would tell me.
Because, like many children,
I was just told that something is a certain way without any explanation. And I was very logical minded. So I was always saying, but wait, why? And my parents really never had the answer because they were just in some ways blindly going along with what they had been conditioned to believe. And so it was confusing for me. So I can give you, two examples just for fun. I was raised Jewish, and in Judaism, you do not take Jesus as your personal savior. But I had friends who were Christian and they did take Jesus as their personal savior. They thought he was the Messiah. And so one day I came home to my parents and I said, well, why don't we believe Jesus is the Messiah? And my parents said, because he's not. Well, he's not. And I said, wait, I can't live with this conundrum because look, he either is or is not the savior. There's no like mid savior. You either are or you're not the savior. And I said to my parents, so if he is the savior, then we Jews are totally missing out. And if he's not the savior, then the Christians are just deluded, they're misguided. And it just seemed I couldn't piece those things together, that people just believe something because they're told to. So I was just told I had to believe something simply because my parents believed it. Another example, keeping with the Judaism theme, is that we would go to temple on Saturdays. And in the summertime, it was hot. And my mom would say I had to wear stockings to the temple over my legs. And I said, but it's hot. I don't want to wear stockings. And she'd say, no, no, you have to wear stockings. It's inappropriate to not wear stockings in the temple. But I would say, well, why is it inappropriate? And she could never because she hadn't thought through it herself. So what she could have said if she had learned conscious communication, if she had taken my course, let's say early on in life, she might have checked in with herself and said, well, I know it shouldn't matter what other people think of our family, but it does. And I know that if you go into the temple without wearing stockings, other people are going to judge you and say, like, oh my God, that girl's not wearing stockings. And Karen, I don't really want people to judge our family. That would have made sense to me. So as a little girl, things weren't adding up. And so I became very philosophical at a young age, trying to understand, why we are conditioned or brainwashed, so to speak, to believe things without checking them out. The other thing that happened for me as a young person in terms of like mindfulness, because so the thing about the word mindfulness is it's a very, it means different things to different people. So when I hear mindfulness, I very much am thinking about this personal pursuit of peace, of not attaching to our noisy minds. And that's wonderful. But my course is not only on mindfulness, it's really a course on how to be a human, because unless you take the deep dive and question, um, your beliefs and where they fit into societal beliefs. And my class is not about activism at all. It's not about being angry. We're going to make sure that the society doesn't tell us who we are, but it's more like a curiosity, an exploration of like where we get to these places of believing things in such I'm going to use the word brainwashed way. And just for fun, I will let you know. So I'm extremely liberal. I that's what I'm looking for. I'm very liberal. I think all sexual orientations are just fine. Gender fluidity is just fine. I have no issue with any of that. I'm super supportive of all of that. Yet I saw a guy in the grocery store yesterday with fingernail polish. And what happened in my body? I immediately went, oh, wait, what? Like I judged him. I saw his fingernail polish, and my first instinct was like, oh, that's weird, which is nuts because there's no reason why men cannot enjoy fingernail polish as much as women. But we have all been brainwashed to think that there's something sort of weird with a guy who would wear nail polish. And here I am, I've always been open minded, and yet I'm still brainwashed. So it's so mindfulness is great because, and I'll say I'm going to come back to mindfulness, but the exploration of what it is to be a human has to come hand in hand. The practice of not attaching to my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, that formal practice, which is mindfulness, which is understanding that I am not my thoughts and emotions. I have thoughts and emotions, but they're not who I am, probably became more prominent in my life as I got older. Because as I got older, I found myself suffering more and more with the content of my mind. I think when I was younger, I had less on my mind, so to speak. And mindfulness, again, the formal practice of mindfulness is to kind of sit with your thoughts, feelings, and emotions and notice them with curiosity, but not try to follow anyone down. It's mindfulness. Usually the way our minds work is we have a thought and we don't like it, and then we spiral and we continue to think about it and ruminate because we think somehow that if we continue to think about it, we'll get to the answer and we'll feel so much better. And that's almost never the answer. That works if you're trying to figure out what you want to make for dinner. Yeah, you have to keep thinking, well, should I get spaghetti? No, I'm going to get squash, But when it comes to matters of like ineffective self-talk is what I call it, or gremlins in our head that are saying things that are like not informational, not helpful, not even true by any stretch of the imagination. And we continue to talk to those gremlins and try to go like, oh yeah, okay, oh, let me make you thinking about this. That is human suffering. I can give you 20 examples of it that probably happened to both of you in the last week where, somebody didn't text you back and you start telling a story about like, oh gosh, I wonder why they didn't text me back because maybe I insulted them and maybe they're mad at me. And you just spiral in this space that's completely ineffective as opposed to telling yourself the truth. Ready? You want to know what the truth is in that situation? That you don't know. That is the truth. So taking a deep breath and having some humility and saying, I don't know what's going on for that other person. I have no clue what's going on for that other person. So there's no point in me sitting there guessing and trying to figure out. I certainly can go and ask the other person. That's called clear and conscious communication. I can certainly go and say, when you didn't text me back, I felt bad. And I'm wondering, is there something wrong? I often get asked about how to speak honestly to other people. How do you tell somebody what you're thinking? How do you speak honestly to another person? And I always say, telling somebody how you feel never has the word you in it. Because people misunderstand. They go, well, you know what? If I'm going to practice speaking honestly, great, because I'm going to tell you who you are and what you did. And, you know, that's not what being honest is about. Honesty is never about telling the person anything about themselves. That's their business. Honesty is only about you because that's the only thing you know, which is what your inner experience is. So clear communication when you're dissatisfied looks something like this: naming the thing that happened, the thing that objectively could be captured by a video camera, and then saying how you felt in response to the thing that happened. So learning how to say, hey, darling, when you said that the lasagna was dry, I felt bad. I felt like you didn't like it. I felt criticized. That's clear and conscious communication. But nobody taught us. What course did you take in elementary school, middle school, or high school, or even college to teach you how to speak effectively? Because we all know that what we tend to do is say something like, you know what, that wasn't very nice of you to say that my lasagna was dry. Where's that going to go? The person, sometimes the other person will say, oh gosh, yeah, sorry. But as soon as you start finger pointing, the communication breaks down. And by the way, yes, as you predicted, I would meander. So much of what I teach in my course is that we all have the same negative and positive traits, all humans, maybe in differing amounts, but it's a kind of illusion when we point at somebody else and say that person is so inconsiderate because we are inconsiderate. And we play games with ourselves because we go, well, yeah, I'm inconsiderate, but just a little bit. And it doesn't really count when I'm inconsiderate because see, when I'm inconsiderate, it's just because I'm busy or it's distracted. But we have no trouble pointing, going, well, I know that person is truly inconsiderate. And there's a kind of craziness associated with that judgment. And there's a separation that happens between us and other people when we point. And there's a lot of finger pointing these days. I give lectures on the current political situation and how we can actually heal from it because everybody points and nobody ever turns it to themselves to say, wait a minute, me too. To look at the other person with a sense of common humanity and say, okay, your behavior was not perfect in my eyes, but you are human and I make mistakes and you make mistakes. And I understand. I understand you is huge. Well, I'm going to give you the most obvious answer you can imagine, which is, of course, it's harder teaching over Zoom because
Yeah.
you can't get the full person. And I'm going to digress by talking about something else, which is related to things we've already been talking about, which is I really like to talk about the body. In fact, I gave a talk the other day about how we're very disconnected from our bodies. And kind of circling back to my point about the mind is a very intelligent tool if you use it effectively, right? And we have a whole bunch of other organs in our body that are very intelligent, that keep us alive and moving and flowing. You know, we've got a heart and lungs and liver and spleen, and we're so disconnected from that. In fact, Sam Harris, one of his podcasts, he says, if you ask the average person, like, where do you live in your body? Which part of your body do you live in? People say, my head. But there's no good reason to say that. Just because your brain is in your head, you couldn't live without the other organs. I feel that humans are really disconnected from their body. It's one of the things that my lab studies. The ability to have a good connection with your body is called interoception. It's the ability to sense when you're hungry, when you're cold, when you've got mucus flowing. It's all the functions that are part of homeostatic balance. You know, it's sometimes called a good vagal tone, the parasympathetic system, etc. Could give you a lecture on that at some point if you're interested. But I'm a big fan of getting back into the body. It's where the emotions live. Emotions are a constellation of physiological responses in your body. That's what emotions are. And then we label them as sadness or anger or regret, etc. So any practice that brings you back into your body is very, in my opinion, really good for you. And I'm a big fan of yoga. That probably won't surprise you. I'm a big fan of dance. You know, not dancing so like people think you're cool and look good, but dancing where you're really releasing yourself, you know. So one of the things that's hard for me about teaching over Zoom is that I don't get to use my full body when I teach over Zoom. Because when I teach in person, there's so much of me. I'm not just a head. I'm a body that moves and feels and explores, and my audience can see that and they can respond in kind. You know, not that they're going to be sitting there moving, but there's a way in which our bodies can connect. When I only look at your head, it's like we're almost destined to just kind of have a mind interaction. And I want more than a mind interaction. I want a heart interaction. I will say this. Really, one of the mantras, it's a mantra that I think is a way to get through life is the following. And I'll just recite it. It is a mantra and you've all heard of it as soon as I say it. And I will take the God word out of it because sometimes the word God rubs people the wrong way. But I'd say, I wish for everybody serenity to accept the things they cannot change, strength to change the things that they can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's, of course, the serenity prayer that's used in Alcoholics Anonymous. But it's one I don't know if you want to use this as the catch-all phrase also, but stop seeing your life as having problems. Understand that life has situations, and there's two types of situations. One type of situation that you cannot change, you have no control over it, in which case you need to accept it, and other kinds of situations where you do have some control, and then you can go ahead and make a change. But stop using the word I have problems. Instead, say I have situations.
Thanks for watching. Hit the like button and comment with your own thoughts and experiences. If you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe to our channel at ReLyfe Videos. Let's rehumanize.